Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show.
Welcome to Consulting Leaders Podcast, a place where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your own practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, John Degnan. Join me today as we talk with the best consultants in their niche. Today, we welcome Cornelia Lucey. Hey Cornelia, how are you?
I'm really well, John. How are you doing?
Good.
Lovely to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. You're a leadership psychologist and founder of Cornelia Lucey Positive Leadership, where you help organizations move from good to great through evidence-based leadership development. And in this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to explore how positive leadership drives measurable business outcomes, from retention to profitability, and why traditional leadership models are no longer fit for purpose. Sound good?
Great. Sounds brilliant. Excited to talk about this.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's really cool to have a psychologist as a consultant. That makes it interesting to me.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah, sure.
So what got you in consulting in the first place?
So my background, John, is one through journalism. So I started off as a newspaper journalist. And in that role, I was really privileged to meet lots of people, prime ministers, presidents, people in positions of power.
Wow.
And I just became really interested in how power, people, decision making happens. And I started then thinking about leadership more. And from there, I moved into a program called Teach First, which is essentially a program that's across the world. But in the UK, it deliberately takes exceptional graduates from high-performing universities and places us in really challenging schools. And so I worked in really challenging environments while simultaneously doing a master's in leadership.
Wow.
And was able to see the real impact that leadership, whether positive or negative, can have on people, children and adults in the school place. And essentially from there moved into training as a management consultant and wanted through that role to understand more really about mindsets and behaviours. And, I was doing so much consulting with leaders and thinking about how we apply programmes, how we apply particular strategies. And I realised that one of the big ingredients often missing in consulting projects is understanding mindset and behaviour. And so I wanted to bring those two worlds together. So I trained as a psychologist and specialising in leadership. So I guess that's how I ended up in the consultancy space, applying psychology.
So you're pretty focused as far as your mission was concerned.
Super focused, yeah. So our mission's all around how do we help leaders understand mindsets and behaviours within themselves and others and bring the best out of themselves and others through that.
I want to rewind. In your journey, you mentioned leadership for children. How does leadership for children apply today to your consultancy practice? What do you learn from leading children?
Oh my goodness, so much. I've learned so much because essentially, we're all just grown up children. And I think transactional analysis is super interesting because quite often adults in the workplace are bringing lots of dynamics from behaviour that they've developed in childhood. So that's been really interesting. And equally, what can motivate and develop and bring the best out of a child can also do the same with adults. So, children like to be rewarded, they like to be recognised, they like to have their strengths acknowledged. So do adults. So there's lots of applications between schools, children's leaders that work in schools and in workplaces too. So it's been super helpful to have had that experience in both worlds.
Do you ever witness certain aspects, certain experiences of lack of leadership that says to you, you know what, this behavior, this person's never going to be a leader?
No,
No.
I don't. No. I think everybody has the capacity to lead and to lead really well. I think there might be a very, very small portion, so we're talking like 0.01% of people for lots of reasons that will not thrive as leaders, and maybe that's another podcast. But essentially, I think, I have seen the most learnedly helpless people become incredibly powerful leaders through the right support, encouragement, develop, and the right challenge as well. I think that's really important, is both levels of support and challenge.
What's the first thing you have to tap into to a person to get them to activate their leadership skills?
The first thing I need to tap into to help people activate their leadership skills is trust. So if I, or a leader I'm working with, or a team that the leader I'm working with is working with, or a group of people, we need to feel a sense of safety and trust before we can activate anything. And I think in order for that trust to be activated, that sense of safety to be activated, I need to bring the most authentic version of myself to the table and to the conversation.
Okay. And, I talk with hundreds of consultants. Very, very, very few have a psychology degree.
Okay.
What
Interesting.
differential advantage is that for you?
I mean, I personally think it's huge. And I actually am finding more and more people working in the business space who have a psychology background.
Yes.
And I'm seeing that pay dividends in terms of the impact that it's having, because essentially psychology is a science,
Mm-hmm.
and it's it's an evidence-based profession. So it's drawing on existing literature about what works in applied practice. Whereas quite often, in my experience of consulting, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but in pure consulting, sometimes we are drawing on models which don't always have the strongest evidence base. Whereas as a practicing psychologist, I'm able to bring that lens to bear on, do I think this is the right model for the right context based on the evidence that I have at hand? Now, someone who is a naturally gifted consultant will be able to do that, I think, anyway, regardless. But I think having that psychology understanding and background means you can just have a bit more of a guarantee over being able to meet the outcomes you want to meet in any given project, because you have that training and that background. Now, obviously, I have a bias to that. And let's do a randomised control trial to actually see if that makes a difference. But I do think it's very helpful. Much as, having other specialisms can also be incredibly helpful to being a consultant as well.
What specific problems are you helping your clients solve today, and why does solving this matter so much to you personally?
Gosh, I'm helping my clients solve so many different problems, and are quite diverse. I suppose some of the themes are things like managing or preventing burnout, increasing self-awareness, increasing and improving growth. So, if we boil down to some basics, improving turnover, reducing attrition, increasing psychological safety in the workplace. And it's lovely to support that. So if I give you some real life examples of that, one of the clients I'm working with works in the care sector, so the health and social care sector in the UK, and they work with a chain of care homes who support the elderly, have residents who are elderly and may have special needs such as dementia. And we've done a lot of work with the leaders of those care homes and of the organisation to think around how do we as leaders show up in a way that brings the best out of us and the colleagues around us, so that we provide the best quality of experience to the residents in our care. And that, in terms of measurable outcomes of that looks like a whole raft of different KPIs. So it's about improving occupancy, so making sure we are selling more beds essentially in our care homes, so that we have a better budget, which means we can have a better spend on the quality of the service that we're providing. But it's also making sure that, other things are attended to, such as all of those leaders taking care of themselves, not burning themselves out, but being emotionally regulated so they can deal with any challenges that come up, because there are all sorts of clinical health issues that arise on a daily basis in these environments. So if I'm a leader working in that space, I need to be taking care of myself so I can attend to that urgent situation that's going to safeguard those residents in that care home. So there's all sorts of challenges that we're working with and outcomes that that's having. Why is that so important to me? It's incredibly important to me. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning, because terrible leadership ruins lives. It can lead to, I'm going to say, suicide. It can lead to people dying unnecessarily. It can lead to people having incredibly poor mental health for the rest of their lives.
I'll also add aging. It can age people.
Completely. It can age us. It can cause, tremendous weight gain, weight loss. It can do all sorts of incredibly terrible things to us. And so I've seen that happen firsthand in the education space, in the finance sector, in the consulting sector. And actually, it isn't also a rocket science about how we can do this differently. It takes an open mind. And so I'm really passionate about this because, one, I know it can make a massive difference. And two, I see it make a massive difference all of the time. And I don't want the bad side of leadership to be showing up as much as, unfortunately, it still is. So I want to see a change in that. And that's why I'm really passionate about what I do.
Who are your ideal clients, and who typically holds the decision to bring you in?
So my ideal clients are those who are open-minded, they're values-based, they're doing this because they know it matters, rather than because they just want to affect the bottom line. My ideal clients tend to be those from particular sectors. Finance, education, healthcare, engineering, that's where I have a track record. And usually the decision-making power comes from the executive team and often the C-suite or a senior leader in the organisation. And I find if that buy-in isn't there from the get-go, and again, hence why leadership is so important, it can be even more challenging to work with that client if we have to reverse engineer buy-in from the top leaders in the organisation. So that's, I guess, hopefully gives you a bit of a general steer about the ideal client. But, it's essentially people who are open to doing the work, who have a growth mindset, who are willing to put the effort in, the energy in, and will, do the hard work to make change happen in order to actually have easier outcomes.
Okay. How do organizations usually find you, and what has worked best for you in your position for your expertise in a crowded leadership space?
I think you've already, John, I suppose, honed in on it, is that leadership psychology and background as well. I think not just being a leadership development consultant, but actually being a psychologist. So having that practitioner expertise, having that background, I think that evidence-based applied approach is very helpful. Also, I think having published and have written books on this subject as well is something that people are attracted to, because it shows a level of credibility, it shows peer review, it shows that a publisher is willing to put their money behind you as well. And then also, I think case studies of impact have been able to delineate me in the crowded marketplace, because people can see, this is someone who has a scientific background, is evidence-based, is published, and has proven impact, and so has a track record. So that, I suppose, as opposed to maybe the odd person who, and we've all been there, who's starting off on their journey. So, all of this experience we accrue, I think can only benefit us in standing out in a crowded marketplace, but also I think taking the approach that we do, which is a positive leadership approach. It's offering a new way of doing things, as opposed to a very traditional way of leadership, which I think is showing just doesn't work anymore. So I think people are attracted to trying something different and doing something which they know will have an impact.
You mentioned thought leadership. What's your view of podcasting as a marketing tool for leadership consultants and psychologists?
I think it's a fabulous idea. I mean, I personally love a podcast. I think it's a great way to share your views and philosophy, and often I will hear clients who've got in touch with me because they've either read a blog or read a newsletter or listened to a podcast. I think it gives the opportunity for people to get to know you a little bit more than just, I guess, the 2D version of you. They get to listen and understand you. So I think it's a great channel to help give voice to your views and your methods and your philosophy. And I think it's a way for people to select whether they do or don't want to work with you as well.
Yeah, I agree. When you're dealing with large organizations and complex buying processes, how do you move from initial interest to assigned engagement?
What I find works, and I guess this is the $1 million question, right? But I find and this is what I really love to do, is it's not about making a sale ever. It's about, do I really understand the problem that you have, that my client has? And have I got under the skin of that problem through the diagnostic conversation that we've had, so that I can formulate and map what methodology and what approach I know will be most effective to their solution, and I'm able to their situation, and I'm able to show how that solution can have a beneficial outcome for them. So I think that a process which is about really understanding the problem, decoding it, mapping it, I think in itself, going through that journey with the client, in my experience, helps them understand that you understand them and you understand what problem they're facing, and you're also able to offer what solutions will work and what that might look like and what impact that will be. So I think that process in itself, which is actually, although I've learned that a lot from my consulting work and consulting training, from a psychology perspective, it comes very much from training around formulation, so understanding the client in front of you. I find that engenders a sense of trust. It shows your integrity, it shows your responsibility, that you're not just there for the quick win, but you're there to understand. So I find just that process in itself helps move things over the line. And I think also just understanding if there is still any doubt or any concerns that someone has around taking that approach, so you know what the barriers are together, and you can work through how you might overcome those barriers. Again, I think this helps move the process forward and helps us actually get involved and start to deliver on the challenge.
How do you retain your clients?
Through the impact that I have, I'm yet to not have contact with any of the clients that we work with. We find that they see the impact and they want to keep working with us in different shapes and sizes, different forms. So in terms of how we might intentionally look at retention, we have our own newsletter to keep in touch with our clients. That keeps our relationships going, and continues to offer value to our clients. We get our clients involved in research projects that we know will be of interest to them, that lead to particular programs or offerings or services. So I think it's them seeing the impact that our relationship's having on the organisation or on them individually or on their team means that they don't ever fully want to let go of that. And I guess there's a tension there, and there's an ethical question there of not creating over-reliance and not creating dependency, because, ideally you would want to deliver a particular programme and you would want to decouple, to use the famous words, and to move on to a neutral relationship. And actually, you know, we do have clients who've done that. Obviously, they've got to the end of a particular service or program, and it's had a lovely resolution, but we still communicate through LinkedIn or newsletters or you know, those kind of ways. And also, you know, the world is constantly evolving. I've been doing what I've been doing for the last 15, 20 years, and gosh, if we just think about the last 3 months, the world has changed dramatically. So actually what you offer to a client 5 years ago, if you still have a relationship and retain that relationship, they're also aware what you might be able to do for them now that will be helpful for them.
Sure.
So maybe it's a product of the constantly evolving world, which means we're able to still support. And again, I go back to psychology. I think human behaviour, habits, emotions, cognitions, they've been constantly changing in recent years, and that affects the workplace. So there is no shortage of needing support in that regard. Do I find myself stuck as a consultant? Love this question, and probably one that we all use a lot in our work. Stuck's probably not stuck, but some of the avenues that I'm pursuing at the moment are challenging the way I think. So moving to more of an online offering, for example, what that looks like, how effective that can be, how agile you can be with that. Not necessarily stuck, but constantly that's stretching me and making me think about how we grow that, and keeping up with demand and through capacity. Again, these are normal challenges I think that we all have as consultants.
As we look ahead into the future, where do you see the biggest opportunity for positive leadership and leadership development over the next few years?
I think there is so much opportunity to grow positive leadership in the space of leadership development over the next few years, because you may have seen the data that came out of Gallup's annual research, their engagement report that came out last week, but we can see that there has been a continual decline in engagement in the workplace. We can see that more and more people are feeling burnt out because of all sorts of reasons, including AI, geopolitical climate, lots of different impacts on the workplace at the moment. And positive leadership can hugely, enormously help people to manage those challenges for themselves, to think around, develop one's own engagement, but to engage your team around you. How can we do that? Well, positive leadership shows how strengths-based methods are really going to support with that and what that can look like. So you're not fumbling in the dark to do that and letting that see continual decline, but you're reversing that decline in your own sphere. Burnout as well. I mean, positive leadership helps us understand how our emotional regulation system works, how we might adapt to a situation. It increases our agility if we learn some of those practices that help us not react in the moment, but take a moment and then respond. It helps us make decisions in a way we have more clarity rather than being completely exhausted and cognitively overloaded. It helps give us the tools to make decisions in a way that are much more effective. So there's so many different challenges we're facing in the workplace at the moment that positive leadership, which is this integration between positive psychology, so the science of what we know, brings the best out of us, so well-being essentially, and how we apply that to leadership. There's so many ways that it offers the tools, practice, solutions to overcome some of these challenges. And you know, the clients that I'm working with at the moment talk to me about the transformation they experience at an individual level, at a group level. And so I know and see the benefits that this is having, applying positive leadership in this really fragmented, challenging working world that we have at the moment. So I can only see this continue to grow enormously in leadership development because it has such lovely impact. The difficulty and the challenge is, I suppose, getting the message out there and sharing more about what we know about the science, because as you said, there is a crowded workplace and lots of people are offering different tools and different ways of thinking and feeling, etc. And I would encourage anyone, who's a purveyor or a vendor or a senior leader looking for how they can support somebody in their team or even themselves or a particular cohort of leaders, to look at what are the evidence-based approaches that are truly going to help, that clearly have a track record of impact, that is evaluated on and can be demonstrated, rather than take marketing materials or someone's word for it. I would be a bit more critical about the offering and speak to people's existing clients to understand the impact that can have. Because otherwise, we're seeing lots of what some excellent researchers have called zombie leadership, where you're seeing lots of models of leadership development being regurgitated because this person's heard of it and they've told that person who's told that person. But actually, by the time you know it, there's 10,000 people who've gone through a leadership development programme and it has not an ounce of evidence or academic rigour to it, and hasn't been proven or tested or demonstrated in anybody. It's just someone thinks it's a great idea and has decided, let's go roll this programme out. So yeah, I think there's lots of opportunity there. It's just, I suppose, getting through the noise of so many different leadership development offerings. Sorry, John, say that again.
I love your positivity and your optimism.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, if I haven't got positivity and optimism, what do we have? And I think positivity and optimism is so important right now. And I think, believing that there is always a better way of doing things, and there are so many ways to find ways of doing better things. And, none of this needs to be a secret. It's, freely available. I think that's something I'm also really interested in, is democratizing access to understanding how we develop positive leadership, whether you have a budget or you don't have a budget. That's really important to me.
Well, if people want to find out more about you and see what you do, where should they go?
Sure. So I have a profile on LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to kind of go onto linkedin.com/Cornelia Lucey, or go onto our website, www.cornelialucey.com. You can see more about the services we offer, but also the case studies, and hear from some of the leaders who've worked with us too.
We'll put all the links in the description. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Consulting Leaders, Cornelia. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, John, and for asking, such great, interesting questions. I appreciate that too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.